We just seen Whitebeard casually shake an island with his Delphoid, which reminded me of how broken Newgate is, why they called him the world's strongest man. We even had the future strongest creature alive, Kaido, jealous of Whitebeard when flexing his Delphoid power. And since Wano, mythical Zoan Delphoids have been highlighted, like Kaido's Azure Dragon Delphoid he would receive in God Valley, or Luffy's Nika Delphoid he would use for the first time against Wano. Heck, even Naked Island having all the Gorsu with mythical creature powers, and we know Loki has some sort of mythical legendary Delphoid alongside Imu as well that will be revealed to be insane. But don't forget pre-time skip who stole the show when it came to Delphoids. It was the Logia in Magma, Ice, and Light, the Admirals, to Blackbeard, Yami Yami no Mi, the strongest Logia, and the Paramecia, which Blackbeard stole from his former captain Whitebeard, the Gura no Mi. Yes, the Quake Delphoid. And I must admit, seeing Law and Kid awaken their insane Paramecia Delphoid powers was cool in Wano, but I know Whitebeard had to have had some insane awakening capabilities, as he had the strongest Paramecia, capable of destroying the One Piece world. Sengoku's words, not mine. So subscribe to the channel, I don't care about likes, and join the Noti gang as we do a deep dive on the Whitebeard greatness. Now people have to understand, Whitebeard always had aura in the story, even early on, like his aura before even being introduced when Ace was stopping Smoker, who stopped Luffy in Lockdown and made Luffy run away in Alabasta, and Ace had to jump in, as well as Ace destroying a bunch of Baroque work ships with one Fire Fist attack. And he was the 2nd division commander of the Whitebeard pirates, and he starts telling Luffy to join Whitebeard and saying he's the best pirate, and pretty much just glazing Whitebeard. And that's how you know you're a strong man, when the guy who does impeccable things that early on in the series is gassing you up as his captain, not himself. That is amazing. I also have to mention, Buggy said that Roger and Whitebeard fought to a standstill, and right now currently he's the strongest pirate as of now, closest man to One Piece. Former Roger pirate Buggy was glazing Whitebeard, knowing that he's seen insane stuff from his captain Roger throughout his life. He still puts respect on Whitebeard's name, when ironically Roger's son Ace randomly was on board Buggy's ship, so him saying this was pretty cool. But still, I think Buggy doing this early on in the series, Oda always wanted Whitebeard to be not a Yonko level character in my opinion. He wanted him to be a Pirate King level character. That's the narrative decision I feel like Oda always wanted to have for him. Now, of course, when Whitebeard eventually does get introduced, people just look at that title of World's Strongest Man, but I look at the immense size of Whitebeard while also being hooked up to monitors, but also telling Shanks to pull up and don't send no messengers when you have something to say. He was #1 up until this moment. Don't forget, guys, he stood in front of Roger's throne. Pretty much could have became Pirate King. Roger was about to tell him how to get the One Piece treasure. He said no. And when Garp first speaks about the Yonko, the 4 pirates who rule the New World Seas, the second half of the Grand Line like they're emperors, Garp said that Shanks, your role model, is on the same level as Whitebeard, as the Yonko. That means that Garp is saying, yeah, you don't know how strong Shanks is because he's on the same level as Newgate. And eventually we would see Whitebeard first lay his eyes on Shanks in a very long time and tell Shanks his face makes his wound ache. And we all thought this was a Roger reference, but now looking back on it and knowing that he has Figureland ties, as his twin brother Shamrock and his father Garling are prominent characters. You guys all saw that panel on Naked Island at the end. They are one of the main characters in this final war. Yeah, it makes sense that Figureland, Garling, and Whitebeard went at it in the past, and that's why his wound ached. Now, of course, Shanks tells Whitebeard, I don't want no smoke, but this guy pulls up on the Moby Dick with his hockey in full force, showing how much respect Shanks actually has for Whitebeard's power. Like, he didn't just casually pull up. He knew at the end of the day, this is an enemy ship, and not just any enemy. This is Whitebeard. My hockey has to be showing at the top peak level. They're able to destroy a physical object. Of course, now knowing what we know about Conqueror's hockey coding, yeah, Shanks, you are a beast. And speaking of Conqueror's hockey, Shanks and Whitebeard eventually do the first ever splitting of the heavens, splitting of the skies. Whitebeard doesn't care about Shanks yapping because he's Whitebeard, and he's the only pirate we know to start a full-fledged war with the Marines. Don't forget that, guys. So seeing Shanks and Whitebeard split the skies, and Oda pretty much telling us pretty time skip that these two are the pinnacle of pirates. If Whitebeard wasn't sick, I think Whitebeard and Shanks, in my opinion, would be considered the strongest Yonko. Yes, over Kaido and Big Mom. But because Whitebeard is sick, he automatically goes down to the weakest Yonko. That sickness and his old age makes him the weakest Yonko. And in my opinion, if Whitebeard wasn't sick and he wasn't old, he's not even a Yonko level, guys. You know what level he's on. I also love how right before Marineford War, it said that Kaido wanted actually some fighting smoke with Whitebeard, but Shanks had to interrupt and they had to go fight to stop, of course, Kaido from going to Marineford, showing that Kaido really respected Whitebeard's power and strength overall. You have to understand, Shanks just became a Yonko 6 years ago, but when it comes to, or 4 years ago in the pre-time skip, but when it comes to Whitebeard, Whitebeard has been ruling since the Rocks era. He's been dominating, if I'm being honest. And how does Whitebeard start off a war with the Marines? By doing something that is a natural disaster. One of the most scariest natural disasters in the world. He causes a tsunami on Marineford Island. And if Whitebeard didn't have a pest like Aokiji in front of him, that tsunami would have caused so much casualties. You guys also that One Piece special showing the fodder Marines and how they had to deal with the war. Imagine a tsunami raining down on them, guys. Such devastation. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of Whitebeard's Delphi power. No pun intended. Yep, that's right, no pun intended, because Aokiji, of course, with his ice Delph fruit, has to freeze the tsunami. And after he freezes the tsunami, he goes straight to the attack of Whitebeard. Doesn't look at his commanders. He says, Whitebeard's right there. I'm going to try to take him out with some ice arrows. But of course, Whitebeard casually sends those arrows with their quake and breaks them, and then sends Aokiji to the ground, where, of course, he would make the ice ground and start the eventual war. So just showing you that Whitebeard was casually just flexing his Delphi powers. He didn't even use any physical raw strength yet. He didn't use any hockey yet. Just his Delphi power. And that's why I'm telling you guys, when I seen him do that recently in the Loki flashback with that crazy island and the waters tilting and everything, I was like, yo, that reminded me of how strong Whitebeard truly is. Yes, Rocks is the captain, but Whitebeard is, don't forget, the world's strongest man. Now, of course, Marineford had many interactions with Whitebeard. Some of my favorites is Crocodile. Crocodile, of course, gets blood from Jozu. Jozu hits him with a nasty hit, and he's bleeding. But the reason why Jozu has to do that is because Crocodile was trying his hardest to get the Whitebeard. Even Luffy had to hit him with a gear second kick with water on, of course, his leg, showing that, yeah, of course, Crocodile really wants to get Whitebeard because they had some beef in the past, because of course Whitebeard destroyed him back in the days. Remember the great pirate era that Roger started? Yeah, Whitebeard had to deal with all those guys running into the new world, and Crocodile was one of them, and he got humbled by the world's strongest man and made him who he is today. Then there's Squardo. Squardo was, of course, an allied captain of the Whitebeard pirates, and Akainu manipulated his mind, of course, because of his hatred for Roger, Whitebeard's rival, and found out about Ace. And he's like, okay, so Whitebeard wants to make Ace the Pirate King, and that's why he's doing all this war for Ace being executed. And Squardo stabs Whitebeard. Now, Marco says right away, yo, how did Squardo stab Whitebeard? Yes, Squardo is pretty strong. He's an allied captain of the New World, the Whitebeard Pirates. You know he has relative strength. He most likely has some haki. Haki wasn't really well developed pre-time skip, and he was pretty much rocking the New World since, of course, the Roger days. But the problem is, Whitebeard is, of course, a monster. How did he let Squardo hit him? It was because of sickness, guys. It wasn't his old age. If he was, his observation haki should have been able to dodge Squardo easily. It just shows you how slow Whitebeard was when it comes to age and sickness, slowing him down in the Marineford War, guys. Squardo was pretty much Oda telling us Whitebeard is not the world's strongest man anymore, and that's why he yelled at Crocodile. He's like, I'm not the world's strongest man forever. Like, come on, relax, bro. Now, after this, of course, Whitebeard does do some amazing things. Like, he breaks the iceberg, letting, of course, the allied pirates leave if they want to leave, saying that I'm not trying to sacrifice you guys. And then, of course, he enters the battlefield, and Sengoku screams, yo, the world's strongest man is entering the battlefield. Everybody beat, like, pretty much 10 toes, and he goes there and destroys Rance, a giant, a monster giant of the Vice Admiral level. Yes, he destroys this giant and breaks his face, guys. He breaks his face. It reminds me of Kamaru Usman when he said to Kobe Covington, I broke your face. That's what Whitebeard literally did, yo. He literally broke Rance's face. And then, of course, there's Whitebeard versus John the Giant. John the Giant is one of those giants that gets talked about a lot during Big Mom's flashback when it comes to Mother Caramel. There, of course, King Harold mentioned John the Giant as one of the giants that are joining the Marine ranks. He's one of the most prominent giants in the Marines, if I'm being honest. Even in the beginning of the series, John the Giant is talking to a bunch of Marines in the East Blue Saga. So he's not your regular Vice Admiral giant. He's actually the top tier Vice Admiral giant. And Whitebeard does blocks his, of course, sword attack and then tilts him and the island in general, showing the devastation of his Delphi power and his physical strength. Yeah, John the Giant, you're pretty talented. You're pretty strong as a giant. But yeah, Whitebeard pretty much said, it doesn't matter. I'm the type of guy that wants to go against your strongest giant. Yeah, Harold. Bring me Harold. Yeah, that's who Whitebeard needs to fight, not no John the Giant. Now, of course, one of the after effects of Whitebeard's powers and abilities, one of the quakes, gets sent flying, and the admirals all stand in front of it. Yes, Akainu, Kizaru, and Aokiji, the three strongest pinnacle of the Marines. These guys all stand in front of Whitebeard's attack, and with armored haki, not just any old armored haki guys, they use advanced armored haki. They're able to block Whitebeard's attack, showing how prominent Whitebeard is, that these low keys have to use the top of armored haki, not the strongest. Like, they think the almost close to strongest when it comes to that invisible armor that you don't even have to touch. They use that to stop Whitebeard's attack. Now, of course, when Whitebeard actually gets into where close to Ace is, there's a lot of fodder Marines. Not really fodder, like probably rear admirals, probably like not vice admiral Marines, but like right under vice admiral Marines, those ranks. Yeah, Whitebeard is fighting a bunch of those Marines, and if I'm being honest, they're stabbing Whitebeard, they're attacking Whitebeard, but it doesn't matter. Whitebeard's Delphu's so powerful that he has them all flying, and the only ones, vice admirals are struggling after this attack, but the only ones that are casually not even like moving is the admirals. The admirals don't even care because that's just how strong they are, guys. Whitebeard is a monster. And of course, Whitebeard causing havoc, that's where Akainu officially steps up. They had their little moment in the beginning when Akainu, of course, did his magma against Josu's iceberg, and Whitebeard, of course, has one of his sword, supreme grade sword, or his weapon, supreme grade weapon, stab one of the magma that's coming down, volcanic magma rock, and tells Akainu, yo, this ain't a birthday cake. Like, pretty much makes fun of Akainu, and Akainu's like, yo, it's actually for your funeral. They had their little banter, but this moment here when Whitebeard's causing havoc is when Akainu actually steps in, and when Akainu steps in, he stops Whitebeard attack. He stops his weapon and says, stop destroying Marineford. And Whitebeard's like, make me. They're talking so much trash. Of course, then of course Akainu does his magma fist, Whitebeard does his quake fist, and they clash, and it's a pretty epic clash. Now, of course, this would eventually lead to Akainu having a moment to actually capitalize on Whitebeard's sickness, his heart attack in the middle of the war. Yes, he does a magma fist into Whitebeard's body, into his abdomen area. And if I'm being honest here, the fact that Whitebeard took that and was still fighting, yeah, we saw what happened to Ace's insides when, of course, Akainu's magma hit there. It really shows you how strong Whitebeard is physically, yo. He's not your regular human, yo. I think, honestly, when it comes to humans, he's kind of like the pinnacle of human power. Now, of course, there's also moments with Aokiji. Aokiji, of course, tries to stop Whitebeard. He freezes Whitebeard. We've seen Aokiji freeze a lot of guys. Like, we've seen him freeze Cracker, Top Down Commander, and have him done in. We've seen him freeze most of the Blackbeard pirates when he, of course, got involved with them. But there is some guys who actually can get out of it. Doflamingo got out of Aokiji's freezing, showing that Doflamingo is not your regular pirate. Garb did, of course, with his hockey, got out of that pretty relatively easy. And Whitebeard with his quakes in Marineford gets out of Aokiji's ice. And not just that, Whitebeard goes for the attack. He stabs Aokiji with hockey, knowing he's a low gear user. And Aokiji, of course, manipulates his Devil Fruits, of course, to stop the hockey from reaching him. But it really shows you how this is not your regular pirate, you Admiral. Like, this is Whitebeard, the Yonko. This kind of was the beginning of the Yonko versus Admiral debate. All these interactions Whitebeard had with these admirals. Now, of course, one of the most main moments of Marineford is Akainu insulting Whitebeard, saying Roger was the pirate king, Whitebeard is a loser of that era. And this is actually becoming a narrative even in the fan base. People are calling Whitebeard a loser for having Rox be his captain, and it being Rox, Scarp, and Roger's youth in their era. And people are like, yo, Whitebeard, why wasn't he a part of that? And then, of course, they're saying, yo, Whitebeard lost to Roger. Never went to got the One Piece treasure. Like, people are just talking a lot of trash for Whitebeard. You have to, don't forget who Whitebeard is, yo. That's not something that entertains him, guys. Whitebeard fought Roger for 3 days at a standstill. You have to remember, Whitebeard is still goated. He just not has the same ambition as Garp, Roger, and Rox, guys. That's my opinion on it. Of course, this was debate Ace, and it worked. This, of course, will eventually lead to Akainu killing Ace and Whitebeard's rage becoming a thing. And if I'm being honest, Whitebeard's rage, a lot of people look at it and compare it to Monkey D. Garp's rage, because Monkey D. Garp stated, I'm gonna kill Akainu. And after what we saw him do post time skip, he might have been able to kill Akainu. So people look at Whitebeard like, yeah, your rage was cool. Of course, you had some devastating quake punches to Akainu's gut. The Akainu was bleeding heavily. Yes, Akainu did take off half of Whitebeard's face, but think about this, guys. Half of Whitebeard's face is gone and he's still fighting, showing you how much a monster he is. And don't forget that Whitebeard's sickness is involved. So if Monkey D. Garp was sick like Whitebeard, he probably wouldn't be as devastating. Like, so you got to give some context to there. So of course the Whitebeard Garp debate usually goes into, of course, the past era monster debate that always happens in the One Piece community. After Whitebeard's insane rage, we would have some pretty cool moments in the Marineford War. Whitebeard versus Blackbeard. Pretty much Blackbeard taking away Whitebeard's Delver Food, but Whitebeard with his insane supreme grade weapon slashes Blackbeard and quakes him to the face. And Blackbeard's begging for his life not to kill him. This is the same Blackbeard that defeated Ace, guys. Just showing you there's levels to this stuff, guys. There's levels, and the Yonko level is just something that you can't even comprehend. Now, of course, after Blackbeard and, of course, his punk-ass crew jump him, Whitebeard still talks and says, "It's not you, Teach." And we get that speech, the One Piece is real. Of course, the memes say, the memes went crazy when it comes to the Whitebeard saying the One Piece is real. But still, he was standing with no marks on his back. He died standing. That is a monster that, like, I'm gonna be honest, one of the greatest deaths we've seen in the One Piece story when it comes to epicness and how monstrative Whitebeard was. I gotta pay respect to respect is due. Like, even post time skip, like the first time we actually get introduced to Kaido, guess who gets mentioned? It's Whitebeard. He says Whitebeard did it right, because this is Kaido who just jumped off a sky island trying to kill himself. But knowing how Whitebeard went out, he's like, yo, Whitebeard did it right. Pretty much calling Whitebeard a legend and how he went away just fighting a war. That's how you're supposed to lose. And Kaido, of course, he would get his going out right too when, of course, he lost to Joy Boy, who I think he honestly wanted to lose to Joy Boy, because it really showed you that, yeah, the pinnacle pirate beat you, and that was Luffy. Now, of course, the narrative of Whitebeard kind of had a shift in the middle of Wano when Sengoku revealed that Whitebeard, Big Mom, Kaido, Shiki, Ochoku, Captain John, Silver Axe, yes, all these guys were under Rox D. Zebek. Rox D. Zebek was Roger's greatest rival. This was a big deal because we thought Whitebeard was Roger's greatest rival. A lot of things were kind of putting Whitebeard to the backside, to the back burner, and not giving him the respect that we always had for at least 1,000+ chapters or 957 chapters at that point. Really showing you that Whitebeard was getting a hit when it comes to his PR and the fan base. But me personally, I didn't really change much because we always knew what kind of guy Whitebeard was. His motivations, how he wanted a family. Like, we saw the flashback, I think that was the whole point of Marineford, that flashback when his crew was making fun of him for not caring about treasure. And he says he wants a family, and they all laugh at him. And you think like Whitebeard was so happy to have his own crew, which he wanted, like that family. Of course, he didn't want that Rock's crew where everyone is fighting and beefing. He doesn't like that. And we would see Whitebeard, of course, fight Odin, which was really cool because Odin got so hyped up in Wano. In the flashback, Odin got so insanely hyped up. So the first pirate to see Odin, of course, was Whitebeard, and they have a Conqueror's Haki clash. And of course, Whitebeard would, of course, eventually overpower Odin. And after that, Odin, of course, would join the crew. It just shows you that Whitebeard was still the pinnacle of pirate power in the One Piece story. And then, of course, later on, we would get Whitebeard versus Roger. Conqueror's Haki coding for the first time being a highlight to an insane level. Like Conqueror's Haki coded class, the first one in the series. Advanced Conqueror's Haki. Roger, the pinnacle of pirates, Pirate King. Whitebeard, the big pinnacle of pirates, world's strongest man. Clashing for 3 days, yo. They went at it for 3 days, and it was a standstill. Showing you how monstrative they were, guys. Put some respect on Whitebeard's name. He went up against Roger, and people like, Roger was nerfed, he was sick. I don't care. Whitebeard fought for 3 days, and it was a standstill. Put some respect on Whitebeard's name. Later on, I think in chapter 1001, Kaido would actually have his top 5 guys he fought. And when Luffy hit him with the red rock, he got reminded, oh, these are the guys who actually gave me the work. And Whitebeard was a part of that, with Rox, Roger, Shanks, and Odin. All monsters. Like, all these guys, if I was in a war, I would want them all on my side. That's how monstrous power they are. People think Kozuki Odin's the weakest out of all of them. No, Kozuki Odin bodied Kaido, guys, and got distracted, and that's why he lost. He has Conqueror's Haki coding and Enma, and insane physical strength and power. He's a monster too. So probably thinking, why make this video just because Whitebeard uses Delphi in the flashback? Well, the reason why I made this video is because we're going to see more in God Valley, and it's about to drop soon. And I feel like people are going to be more surprised of how powerful Whitebeard were because they're sleeping on this guy. Don't forget, Loki's flashback will really show how monstrative, of course, Pirate King level is, with Monkey D. Garp, Gold D. Roger, and Roxy Zebek having an insane moment in God Valley. But don't forget, Whitebeard is with them. Whitebeard's with Rox, Whitebeard's with Garp, and Whitebeard's with Roger. He's on their level and respected as such. And I feel like Marineford, Oda giving Whitebeard Marineford was a show that this guy is not your regular Yonko. He's not Big Mom, he's not Kaido. he's a cut above the rest in my opinion.